Welcome back to Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia for race 2 of the 2023 Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia Series. It's nice to be back and looking at a dry circuit, something that we've not seen an awful lot of during the start of a Super Trofeo session this opening round. Of course, back after a 3-year hiatus to the very circuit that started it all for Super Trofeo in this part of the world back in 2012, Sepang International Circuit. Run a number of fantastic seasons and seen a great number of drivers across a long period. In fact, since its inception, 254 drivers from 30 nations have competed in 96 races on 18 different circuits. We've got a couple more new circuits coming this year. We'll get to that a little bit later, but certainly it's been a very interesting opening race here yesterday. In fact, the car on screen was the one that set the pace, and perhaps not surprisingly, it's a real tradition for New Zealand drivers, New Zealand-based drivers, to be very good in the wet. I'm talking about the rain. Just about every session that the new Evo 2 Huracan Super Trofeo has been on track has seen a little bit of sprinkling rain before the start of the session, maybe a slight downpour during, but certainly not enough water to create much of an issue. But that all changed yesterday. We started out very much like we've started out today. It was dry, the cars went out, circulated, got back to the grid. We went through all the startup procedures and presentations, etc. Saw all the drivers comfortably in their cars, and then the rain started to fall. It was only fairly light rain. I'd made the unfortunate mistake of suggesting that perhaps this was going to clear, because that's what had happened the previous 2 days. And almost as soon as I'd finished that sentence, it was a very solid tropical downpour, and it wasn't going anywhere for quite a while. In the end, I think we lost about 45 minutes delaying the start of the race, until of course the safety car had been out, done a couple of circulating laps to check that the conditions of the circuit weren't too bad. There were a couple of rivers running across various parts of the circuit during the intense part of the rain, but cars went out ready for the start, and interestingly, a number of drivers made the change to slick tyres. One of them, the objective car of Jackson and Tony Walls on screen, and also the 2 Kiwi drivers in Chris Vanderdrift and Marco Giltrap. They also started on slicks, and the pole sitter too, which was based on a fair bit of experience that Dan Wells has also had behind the wheel of one of these cars, and of course Oscar Lee, who drives alongside him. Last couple of seasons they've been doing a bit of time in Europe, been very successful in this particular format, very successful in the last World Final, came very close to winning that. But they started from pole position, and the race was very, very interesting. To make the decision to go onto slicks straight after the intense rainfall was something that I guess in many cases was questionable. But talking to Chris Vanderdrift earlier, he said, well, if you've got experience at this circuit, you know that you are actually capable of doing that. There's so much heat, ambient heat, that the conditions, even after a heavy downpour, are actually capable of withstanding circulating on slick tyres, and he showed that quite comfortably. He said the cut-off point was about a 2:20, and if you could circulate on on slick tyres during the wet conditions at that pace or better, you were okay. Because the other issue that is part of this, and something that those teams were well aware of, and in fact caught if that's the number 10 car, which I think it might be, on screen, it certainly caught them out. But if you come in and make a tyre change at any stage during the race, you incur a 50-second penalty for doing so. You can do that during the tyre stop, or if you don't stop for 50 seconds, you incur that at a later stage. But the number 10 car came in and was to serve a pit stop penalty. They didn't serve their pit stop penalty, but for a different reason, and perhaps it was a regulation change that caught them out. For anybody that saw it yesterday, they ran around comfortably in second. Jonathan Chicotto was doing a fabulous job hanging on to second behind Chris Vanderdrift, who, thanks to his talent in the wet, was just disappearing off into the distance. And unfortunately, at the end of the race, they were disqualified. The reason being, because of the uncertainty on the grid after all the rain, you have a certain period under the regulations in which you can change tyres. And for most people that know motorsport quite well, about 5 minutes before the race is scheduled to start, you have to have made that decision, and the car needs to be sitting on all four wheels. Somewhere along the line, they made a decision to make a change, but there's also a 3-minute allowance in there somewhere, and that may be that it's 3 minutes before the start of the race, or declared the start of the race, that the car needs to be back on all 4 tyres. The 5-minute window was to make the final choice on what tyre you're going to put on the car. So in that slight level of confusion, they missed that, were given a 50-second penalty. We did see that appear on the timing monitors for much of the later stages of the race. They didn't make the pit stop, crossed the line in position number 2, and unfortunately received a post-race penalty, which saw them disqualified from the outright result. Frustrating for all the effort that they'd put in during the course of the race to be in that position, but rules is rules, as they say. And if they'd missed that one because of a change of regulation, then that becomes a certain level of frustration, because you don't want to be having little things like that upsetting the end result. But we're back here. Doesn't look like it is going to rain. It is overcast. It is temperatures in the low 30s again. Very humid. It's no surprise. Look where we are in the world. So a lot for the teams to contest with. But we get going again, and hopefully today we get an uninterrupted 50-minute race, start to finish. Compulsory pit stop between minute 20 and minute 30. All cars must come in. If you're a 2-driver pairing, then you must have a minimum stop of 85 seconds, which is a safety issue. If you're a single driver pairing, because of the fact that realistically you are aware of the track conditions, you're up to speed, you're going to be able to come out of pit lane and carry on potentially with the pace that you had prior to the pit stop, you serve an 88-second minimum time stopped. So those sorts of things will need to be factored into the equation. Of course, if you need to change tyres for any reason, well, that's a whole other kettle of fish. There is Sepang International Circuit, 5.543 kilometres. Of course, made for the Malaysian Formula 1 Grand Prix. It took me a while to get that out. A Herman Tilke designed circuit, like many of the other circuits in this part of the world, Shanghai International and Korea International, also Herman Tilke designed circuits for Formula 1. We haven't seen Formula 1 here for a number of years, but certainly it plays a big part of MotoGP. And there is one of the drivers just being briefed. Looks like it may well be pole sitter David Chen. Now, it was an interesting result for them yesterday, the number 16 Harmony Racing entry. They didn't make the compulsory pit stop window. They had a technical issue at some point with the car, ran very wide at one stage into turn 1. The next thing we saw was that they were off on the run up to turn 4, between turns 3 and 4 on the side of the circuit, and asking questions about what had happened this morning. They were saying there was a technical issue that they had to deal with and had to stop the car, and ultimately they had to bring out the flag and the safety car to recover the car behind the barriers. It doesn't look like David Chen. It's a little bit further back down the order. Again, it's the first return race of Lamborghini Super Trofeo after a more than 3-year break, so it'll take us a little while to get used to all the new drivers and what they look like through the visors, and of course getting our tongues around all the different names, because the great things about championships like this is a good mix of both experienced drivers and amateur drivers. There are a number of single driver entries, and some of those are amateur drivers. So you've got different classifications. To just highlight what those classifications are, you've got pro drivers, of which in this instance there are only a couple, one of which of course is Chris Vanderdrift, another one of which is Dan Wells, and that is a gold rated driver. Now this is an international standard based on your experience. You can have if you've got a 2-driver combination, you can have 2 golds, you can have a gold silver or 2 silvers, or you can have a gold and silver who is racing solo. That is also dependent on their experience. In Pro-Am, as it suggests, it's professional and amateur. You can have a gold-bronze combination or a silver-bronze combination, because traditionally, of course, the amateur driver is a bronze driver. You have the Am category, which is for either 2 bronzes or a single bronze driver. Then you have Lamborghini Cup, which is determined by the organisers. It's based on attracting new people into the sport that want to come and race at this level in a GT spec car and be competitive, but they may not have the experience to have the runs on the board to be classified as a bronze, silver or gold driver. So, or have the level of experience to be able to be determined to fit into any of those categories at a certain level. So that is for Lamborghini Cup. And we did see the presentation for that yesterday. And if we go down to how yesterday played out, the championships as they stand on the pro class, well, for the reigning champion returning after a 3-year break, Chris Vanderdrift, he did very, very nicely. He wound up with 16 points alongside Marco Giltrap, the young 18-year-old New Zealander who's his teammate, and Xu Shengwei and David Chen, unfortunately, second in that category, but recorded no points because, unfortunately, they retired halfway through the race, but they start this one from pole position. In Pro-Am, it was Oscar Lee and Daniel Wells who wound up at the top. They also got pole position, so they take an extra point as a result of that. 16 points to them. Tony Walls and his son Jackson, second in Pro-Am with 12 points. And Wei Liang Ni and Miko Nasi, who started very well yesterday, position number 3 on 10 points. In the AM category, it's Chang Woo Liu and John Kwon, the two drivers from Korea, who did a brilliant job to storm through to second yesterday. Certainly in the drying conditions, they were one of the sensations, but one of those teams who elected to start on slick tyres. 15 points for them. Aniwat and Passarat from Sombat, the two Thai drivers for Absolute Racing, a second. They took pole position for their category. They're on 13 points. Lolin Chen and Mark Darwin in position number 3 in the AM category after the opening race on 10 points. And in Lamborghini Cup, Superchai, who did such a good job and had pole position for his categories, on top with 16 points. Kumar is second on 12. And the O brothers, Hari and Haziq, on position number 3 on 10 points. And in the teams championship, well, Absolute kind of blew that one out of the water. They had a very solid run during their debut in Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. They're on top on 15 points. SQDA Grit Motorsport second on 12, and D1 Racing Team third on 9. So that's the update for the various different categories. We've got a number of winners, and they will no doubt be looking for additional points. Now, starting this race, 2 15-minute qualifying sessions yesterday. A little bit drizzle as the teams hit the circuit. Wound up with Chris Vanderdrift taking, well, he was looking to take pole position, but in the end, he didn't record a time. So they will start, the winners of yesterday, there it is, left of screen, bottom left of screen, they will start rear of field. Unfortunately, a couple of red flag incidents. I was just talking to him 10 minutes before we came into commentary, and he said, oh man, it was so frustrating. As I was coming to the line, I could see the red flag, and each time I'd get to the line, it was red flag. And by the time we got through all that, we didn't end up getting a time on the board, so we will start this race from dead last. For the aficionados of motorsport, that's actually good news, because that's going to really make things very, very interesting as yesterday's winning team charged through from the rear of the field. But in qualifying, ultimately in the second session, it came down to the experienced David Chen, who put the Harmony Racing Lamborghini on pole position with a 2:07.4. Chang Woo Lee and John Kwon, just check, I think John's going to start. Yes, he is. He finished yesterday, so he'll be behind the wheel in the SQDA Grit Motorsport entry. Starts alongside, he recorded at 2:08.4. Oscar Lee, sharing with Dan Wells, will start from position 3, and they're in a great position to continue their strong form in Pro-Am, of course, current points leaders. Alongside them is Aniwat in the Thai Absolute Racing entry, the number 19 car. Back to row 3, it's Mark Darwin in the number 33 Orange Iron Lynx entry, alongside Vincent Tai in the BC Racing number 51. Back to Ray Liu, in the TRT Racing number 18. And Kah Hing Se in the D1 Racing Team entry, the number 28, alongside on row 4. We're just looking at a little bit of vision of the teams going down the grid. Now there is John Kwon sitting behind the wheel. Hongsik John from Hankook. He's the Hankook representative in this part of the world, does such a brilliant job. He's just keeping tabs on his teams, because he's fellow countrymen. What's interesting about that particular team is this is their first foray into international motorsport, so a series that runs outside of their home country. And to finish second yesterday, they were absolutely overjoyed. They were arguably one of the drives of the day. Probably not surprised to see Chris Vanderdrift take another victory in Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. What was it was being suggested to me earlier? That he's probably opened more bottles of champagne than most waiters after another podium appearance yesterday. Top step of the podium for the Giltrap team. And we are about to start our warm-up lap, of course. Standing start now, but that's just to get the cars rolling. They are rolling starts in Lamborghini Super Trofeo. So we will see those cars circulate, get a little bit of heat into the tyres. Ambient temperature in the low 30s, humidity very high at the moment. Track temperature, of course, quite high too, as we saw yesterday with that rain disappearing very, very quickly. David Chen, he's only been in motorsport since 2018. He's been a very experienced one-mate campaigner. He's Certainly appeared a number of times in some Am Cup competition and really made us question whether or not he was an amateur or a pro. He's a very accomplished driver. He will start, as you can see there, on pole position. John Kwan in the SQDA Group Motorsport entry, the number 63, blue and purple. Start from position 2. Oscar Lee alongside Dan Wells in position 3. Aniwat will start the Absolute Racing number 19. And I think it's, well, we're just going through it. I don't need to think about anything, do I? It was Crimson Tide. No, I'm one lap further up. Aniwat, Oscar Lee, Vincent Tye, Mark Darwin. I might have a slightly different list to you. Payne Say, Ray Yu on the 4th row. Bobby Buncher on position number 10. Yes, alongside Weiliang Ni. Position 11, Tony Walls. Position number, car number 11, position number 12. Position 13, Keith Vong. Camlum Racing entry, position 14, Super Chai in the same course, number 71, Lamborghini, position 15, Liu Hao Wen in the Vortex Orion Endurance entry, Hari O in the HZO Fortis Racing team, number 5, alongside in position number 17, the TRT Racing, Johnny Chicotto. After a great job there, he is on screen. No, he's not on your screen, he's on my screen. Apologies for that. I've got multiple screens in front of me. And then Chris Vanderdrift starting from position number 18. And Eric Kay in position number 19, sadly by virtue of them having a fairly large off during qualifying number 2 yesterday. Damaged their car, which was repairable, but just not in the time that they had available. So they elected to transfer the number 91 to the 88 entry that had qualified, but that was the spare entry for Super Trofeo Asia. And they will be campaigning the number 91 on that car. They will start rear of field just adrift of Chris Vanderdrift. Coming up between turns 14 and 15 and into the final corner will be underway. It's nice to be able to predict that there's no rain. In fact, I'll stop talking about the weather. Who knows, it could be a hurricane the way we end up with commentators upsetting the order of the weather. Get ready to go racing. Race 2 of what will be 12 races across the course of this year starts here, finishes at Vallelunga in Italy later in the year. We're off to Australia for the first time next month. David Chen leads the field around. Coming to the line, he sets the pace. When he goes, the field goes. Red lights, green lights, underway. 4 wide further back. There's plenty of room, but gets tight once you get down to that first complex. David Chen's been here before. He's very comfortable. John Kwan just trying to keep out wide. The 33 entries moved up nicely. Mark Darwin up a number of positions. In fact, he's gone inside John Kwan too, so he's taken over position 2. So from P5 to P2, that's good move forward from the local driver. Very experienced around Sepang International Circuit, Mark Darwin. It'll be interesting to see how David Chen can manage to carry on the performances that he's shown in the past. Very capable driver in a wide range of GT competition. Now, here are the faster drivers coming through the pack. Already midfield for Chris Vanderdrift. He's made up wholesale ground down to turn 4. See just how far back he is. The timing monitor will start to refresh before too much longer. We'll get that update, but at the moment, there's David Chen from Mark Darwin, John Kwan. We'll see who's moved through behind them. It may be Tony Walls. No, it's not. It's the other. Tony Walls a little bit further back. In fact, Oscar Lee's in position number 5. And there is yesterday's winner, Chris Vanderdrift, already inside the top 10. So he's made massive gains just in half a lap here at Sepang International Circuit. He knows it like the back of his hand. He's done an awful lot of miles around this part of the world. Certainly one of the most experienced drivers in the field, arguably the most experienced driver in the field. As we watch David Chen just circulate comfortably. That setback yesterday didn't do their championship position the good that they were hoping. And a tight line to the outside. give himself a wider arc through the final corner. Saw a number of drivers spin there yesterday early in the session. Of course, the wet allowed drivers to make that distinction between carrying on wet tyres or running the slick tyres. It certainly looked like the track was going to dry, and those drivers that made the decision to run on slicks, even some of the amateur drivers, really benefited from that towards the end of the race. It's purple sectors for David Chen in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Jonathan Cicotto fastest in Sector 4. So it's David Chen, Mark Darwin, John Kwon, Say, Oscar Lee, Cicotto, Vanderdrift into position number 7. Chris Vanderdrift's lap, first lap in, 2:13.9, 2:10.8 for race leader David Chen. Just set the fastest first sector. But certainly looks like Mark Darwin's matching him. It's a 27.0 to a 27.2 for the first sector, so there's not much separating them. Looks like we might have seen another position change now for Chris Vanderdrift on screen. Yeah, up to position. No, he's not. He's still further back, sorry. Leaping him further forward. The 21 entry of Oscar Lee on screen, immediately behind him. Here's Cicotto. He was certainly turning a pretty good pace yesterday in the closing stages of the race, but unlike Chris Vanderdrift, he was pretty certain still on wet weather tyres, so making pretty good gains. I think we get to 2:19, a high 2:19. Andre Couto was pointing out to me this morning. Was a driver, coach for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. Driver with a lot of experience, former Macau Grand Prix winner. There you are, Mark Darwin, the local driver. Very much a journeyman, gun for hire. Very popular with the amateur drivers, just to take advantage of his experience. So it's great to see him at the wheel of the Iron Lynx entry. Ties to the former Triple F racing operation of Sean Fu and Andrea Caldarelli. Unfortunately not at the moment existing within the ranks of Lamborghini. They retired the team just for the short term. But great to see them still having some level of input to the Squadra Corsa. John Kwon, one of the rock stars yesterday, ultimately crossed the line in third position with the penalty for the number 10 entry. They were elevated to position number 2, and in the process of doing that, earned themselves some very, very good points for the championship and the AM class lead. So for an AM team to come through to finish in position 2 in the opening round of the season was a solid result for two drivers who are very, very new to this form of racing. So a great result for them. The team's just watching on in pit lane, keeping up with the action as David Chen extends his lead just ever so slightly over Mark Darwin. It's out to 9/10 of a second. I don't think there's any question as to who the likely fastest car on track is. So the pace now has been set at 2:08.3, set by Chris Vanderdrift. Looking at the timing there, it looks like a 2:08.5 for Cicotto and 2:09.9 for Say in position number 4. 2:09.2 for David Chen and Mark Darwin. So that's the pace at the moment. Lap record for this circuit in the Evo 1 version of the Super Trofeo, set in 2019 by local driver Afik Yazid. It was a 2:04.69. During qualifying we saw 2:06.2s. Oscar Lee under fire, Cicotto being very racy, not much of a passing move down at that part of the circuit, down at turn 9. Certainly worth a look, but you really have to make a definitive move in a GT car. You've got to be well and truly alongside. Talk about whether or not you're far enough alongside to be able to make the move and have it declared a pass is one thing, but making contact in a modern GT car is not something you want to be doing, not with the amount of aero that is sitting on the side of these cars. Aesthetically, these are a beautiful car, but a lot of that aesthetics is actually very useful aerodynamics to help the performance of the car. That was a dive up the inside too. So there may well have been a position change there with Cicotto moving through on Say. In fact, no, it's John Kwon, and he's taken that position too as Vanderdrift now joins this fight. So there's the top 3 as they crossed the line yesterday, fighting over position number 4. So things are well and truly on. In fact, position number 3, Vanderdrift, lights on, is already onto the tail of John Kwon from rear of field. So from 19th already to position number 5. Chris Vanderdrift's doing everything he needs to do. And to hand over to Marco Giltrap, well, Giltrap showed yesterday he's done a great job. Only 18 years of age, hasn't done a lot of GT racing just yet. He's been competing successfully in both New Zealand and Australia over the last 12 months. Very new to him, the Lamborghini, and very much a racer's car. Talking to Andre Couto, the driver coach, who went out and established a benchmark time and a benchmark setup for the amateur drivers to determine their data from on either Thursday or Friday. He said these cars are the one make car, absolutely fantastic. Ride height's a little bit higher than a GT3 car. Of course, still the 5.2 litre mid-mounted V10 engine that is run by the Huracan GT3. Looks like John Quan's just moved over to let Vanderdrift through. He has, unless he's got an issue. You don't want to move over and back off too much because he's going to come under fire from those drivers immediately behind him. So that has allowed Chicotto to just open up a bit of an advantage now on Vanderdrift. Of course, the pit window is going to open at the 20-minute mark. When you've got your more experienced driver, potentially the pro, in the car, they will run longer into that window. So they will pit closer to the 30-minute mark. The amateur drivers, they will tend to pull out during about just after the 20-minute mark, once the window opens, to hand over to the faster driver. But that depends on them. In many cases, the AM driver is the owner of the car, and they want to experience the race. So maybe they won't. It depends on where they are in the race and where they are in the championship points. So that's up to the individual teams. But traditionally, you will find that the pro drivers will go as long in this stint as they can. Now, in the case of Marco Giltrap, his performance, Chris Vanderdrift was saying in most sessions, he was only about a second off his own pace. So there's a chance that there's a good, there's a nice move down the inside as he pulled it off, 2 under brakes. Yes, he has. That was a very comfortable move. So that's a position change. So John Quan's lost another one now. In fact, he may have lost a couple. Let's just see as they cross the line. He has. That's Kahing Say. It's moved through in the number 28 entry. Just watching that as things went on. So yes, Marco Giltrap is using his experience to pace himself against Chris Vanderdrift, but there's no substitute for miles or experience. Vanderdrift's the reigning Pro Series champion and outright champion for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia from 2019. Has done a lot of miles in these cars, so he's got a lot to teach Marco Giltrap. No doubt the young Kiwi will be absorbing every little bit of that. Nice look up the inside to turn 4. Wasn't going to happen. It's car number 51, Vincent Tai, BC Racing. Hand over to Johnson Huang after the pit stop. See just how close we are to Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Not too far away from the racetrack. Well positioned. One of the attractions with the international competition is you can come straight in from the airport quite comfortably and leave straight away afterwards. Very popular venue. Beautiful part of the world. A bit further back down the pack, that's position number 14. Kumar in the Iron Link Sentry, the second Iron Link Sentry, the sister car to the orange number 33 of Mark Darwin. A bit further up the road in position number 2. John Quan's pace is just dropping off that little bit. 212s. He was doing 212s yesterday, incredibly, on slick tyres and the drying track. So the pace has managed to maintain. So he's very, very consistent. 212.9 last time round. His best, though, has been a 2:10.1. So actually he has. He's dropped nearly 3 seconds a lap on his pace. He did back off to let Vanderdrift through, but he may have lost a bit of time during that. So Chicotto is now fastest on track. 2:07.7 has been the pace. Remember, Pole was a 2:06.2, 2:08.6 was the fastest time yesterday. Lap record 2:04.6. Now, a few changes in that, of course. That was back in 2019. Since then, this part of the circuit's been resealed. You can see the darker tarmac there. It's to prepare for MotoGP. So the circuit's received a bit of an upgrade. This is the Evolution 2, Evo 2 of the Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo. Much better brakes. One thing the drivers have talked a lot about, in fact Andre Couto was talking about just how good they were and how adjustable, is H-stage ABS, which is a bit of a carryover from the Evo 1. Aero's a little bit different too, so it doesn't have the same aero that the GT3 car has. But additionally this year, and it's a worldwide thing, Hankook is the control tyre supplier. So they're using the C56 compound, C54, I'm sorry, C54 compound. Oh, there's been a spin. It's the green entry. That firm on my notes. Let me just check where he would have been. It's the number 5 entry, I think. Where was he? No, there. It's Harry O. believe. Yes, it is. And he's now shown in position number 18, so he's lost a number of positions. Lap time, there he is, just having a spin top of screen. So yeah, they were looking a little bit further back down the order. Just unloading the rear of the car, perhaps getting on the gas just a fraction too early if he'd been a little bit offline on the slightly dirtier part of the circuit. Oh, gee, now, this is not going to end well. Never ends well there. This could well be safety car. Unfortunately, you can't run too wide on the exit of turn 3. We saw that with the 91 entry of Henry Kay during qualifying. Much the same outcome, damage to left rear of the car. I'm not calling the safety car, of course, but traditionally, when an incident like that has happened, then we will would suggest the safety car will make an appearance, which would be frustrating. Certainly, with a comfortable lead for David Chen out front, 2.2 seconds now. Johnny Cicotto is pushing through. He's only 0.4 of a second behind Mark Darwin. Just look at top of screen. He's just run wide. In fact, he's gone way wide out onto the grass, just turned the car around, and in that particular part of the circuit, at that speed, you've certainly come out of the 1-2 complex and you're pulling gears fairly quickly, full throttle, lose the tail. You're not going to catch it too easily, and that's happened a number of times over the years. So a lot of frustration, unfortunately, for Harry O, HZO Fortis Racing Team Lamborghini. And there we are, safety car has been deployed. And we are still 6 minutes shy of the pit window opening. Again, I didn't check the regulations, but my understanding is that you cannot effect that pit stop under safety car. So we would need to wait until the restart. But in this particular instance, a number of the pro drivers are in the car. Dan Wells isn't, of course, so you'd expect to see Oscar Lee, who's back in position number 6. I'm a little bit surprised he's not further forward. He's quite experienced now as a campaigner in one of these cars. Of course, he and Dan were very competitive in the World Final last year and very competitive in Europe. So a bit surprised to see his pace has him back in position number 6. Quickest lap so far for them is at 2:10. It's not too bad. The pace at the front is certainly better than that. 2:06.7 for David Chen. Check that because my screen here is a little bit fuzzy with respect to the actual numbers. I'll see what I can do about trying to improve the clarity of that and just get an update on where that timing monitor is, so we can keep on top of it, because certainly the pace is going to start to improve as the race unfolds. Just to check who is the quicker of the drivers at the moment. There we go, that's a much better screen. So 2:08.7, it's not a 2:06, 2:08.7 is fastest lap at the moment for David Chen. Jonathan Cicotto at 2:07.7, 2:07.3 for Chris Vanderdrift, no real surprise there. There's David Chen, your race leader on screen. Cicotto now right under his rear wing, so Cicotto's picked up about 4 seconds in all of that. So he'll be looking to make the absolute most out of this over the restart. It might take a little bit of time to recover the number 5 Lamborghini. It just depends on how much damage there is to the rear of the car, whether they can just tow it out of the position it's in, or whether they're going to have to do something a little bit more dramatic and put it on a tilt tray or a crane to bring it back behind the Armco fence. Certainly it's not going to be this lap. I don't have any other vision to be able to update you on how they're going right at the moment, but the field will certainly stream past there in the next 60 seconds or so. So it's David Chen, Jonathan Cicotto, Chris Vanderdrift, Mark Darwin, Kahing Say, Oscar Lee, Aniwat in the number 19 Absolute Racing Lamborghini. We'll hand over to Prom Sombat after the compulsory stop. Vincent Tai, Bobby Buncheron in position number 9. He's been nice and consistent, qualified position 10. We'll go back to the starting order. Just check that, yeah, the number 78 True Visions Motorsports entry. So a real veteran of GT competition in a variety of different marques over many years, Bobby Buncheron. Sooty look Buncheron. Ray Liu in position number 10 at the moment. John Kwan's actually dropped all the way back now to position number 11. One wonders whether he had a bit of a drama that we didn't see on screen. No, they have been able to tow it away. So that damage to the rear is not as bad potentially. Let's hope for the team as it may have looked. So they'll pull the car back behind the Armco fencing. With any luck, we might be able to get a restart at the end of this lap. Pit window opens at 13:33. It's 13:30. So in 3 minutes' time, we will see the pit window open. Less than 3 minutes' time now. You can see the clock in the top left of the screen. It shows 32:35 into this race. Sorry, left in this race, which means the window will likely be open. So there'll be a flood of teams pit immediately after the safety car comes in. Unless, of course, it's the end of this lap. Where are we now? No, we've still got half a lap to go. The teams down turn 7, turn 8. Down to, turn 7, turn 8. Heading down to turn 9. Of course, the slightly uphill, almost hairpin left-hander. Just turning in there now. Position 11 was John Cronwell, and me in position 12 in the Pro-Am entry. They're currently holding down position number 3 in Pro-Am. Pro class, of course, led by David Chen, who's rounded with second. The Am category being led by Mark Darwin over Kane Say. In the Lamborghini Cup category, Kumar is in position number 14. He is leading there. Eric Kay, we're talking about the incident that his brother Henry had in qualifying, the number 91 entry, position number 13. So we go back the other way, of course. Tony Walls is position number 4 in the Objective Racing entry that he shares with son Jackson. They're in position number 15, Keith Vong. From Macau, but South Australian based. Is in position number 16. He'll be looking forward to the Ben Motorsport Park, which is the next round on the calendar. And we will be there on June 9 to 11. Oh, safety car is in. Okay, so during the course of filling in positions, and David Chen's away already. He's gone. Safety car's gone. He's rocketed down into turn 15 on the throttle, and Chicotto's just sticking with him. So did he go too early? He play his cards too early. Geez, Chicotto's going to be close to being in front as they get to the line, but he's done what he needs to do. But he has the outside. Can he keep the momentum to get across in front of David Chen? Chen will run him wide, I'd expect, just to make it harder for Chicotto to be able to get down the inside. And that opens the door for one Chris Vanderdrift, who now has to be very careful. You don't want to risk things in a race of this length. We're not even at half race distance yet, but he's right in the box seat from position 19 through to position number 3. As Chicotto now takes over the lead, very wide on the exit of turn 3 was David Chen. To be very careful not to do what Harry Ode had just done. See his car being recovered. Caused the safety car intervention. Mark Darwin just in a watching brief back in position number 4. Kane Say and Oscar Lee in positions 5 and 6. Anyway, behind them, the number 19 entry that had been quite strong yesterday. All tie pairing. Bob Sombat will take over after that stop. Pit window is now open. So let's see how many cars dive into pit lane at the end of this lap. Certainly Oscar Lee will be one of those. Currently sitting back there in position number 6. Oh, Tony Walls has come straight in. So he's already in to hand over to Jackson Walls. Product of the Top Gun Racing Academy in Australia, Troy Hunt's operation. And a few drivers from that particular group over here in Asia competing. Another of those back in the day is Nathan Antunes, racing with another Lamborghini driver who's had a lot of experience in Super Trofeo, I've rolled it off my tongue for years, and all of a sudden I've tripped over it. Delantha Malagamua, a Sri Lankan-based driver, not competing over here at the moment, but iconic in this part of the world, certainly for competing in Lamborghini. Still does that in his home country. As now David Chen under fire from Chris Vanderdrift. The two pro drivers. Vanderdrift's gone up the inside. He's just forcing that little bit wide, and David Chen's done a brilliant job to give him some racing room. Has Vanderdrift lost his momentum though? Chen's just forcing him a little bit wide because that's the more optimum line, being closer to the outside of the circuit, but he's not making it easy as Jackson Walls now comes out immediately in front of them, but now on track. He's behind the race leader, Vanderdrift, going just a little bit wide. Mark Darwin's looking to maybe pick up a position. He knows too that the driver in front of him is one of the most experienced campaigners in this part of the world, certainly in Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Cecotto's really flying, looking to try and make amends for that setback they faced yesterday with being disqualified after a regulation issue. Ooh, so Jen couldn't quite close the door. He did a little bit on Mark Darwin, but by the time he tried to turn in at turn 4, Chris van der Drift was there. Position taken. There is the flood of cars in to make driver changes. So in the two AM driver combinations, well, they can choose to pit whenever they'd like to pit. But a number of those drivers making changes at the moment. From the 91 all the way back, say half the field at the moment is currently sitting in pit lane. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, just shy of half the field. There's the number 37 entry. They've had a driver change. Kumar, well, I'm not sure that they have actually, to be perfectly honest, having said that. Number 37 entry. No, Kumar drives on his own. So certainly that gives him a chance just to have a little bit of a breather, go through to the second leg. Minimum stop for a two-driver operation, 85 seconds. Minimum stop for a single driver operation, there's another one on screen, Bobby Buncheron, 88 seconds. And we saw a number of teams mess that up yesterday, unfortunately. Maybe a bit of a hangover from being away for 3 years. And they were given immediate drive-through penalties, and that effectively ruins your day. 25-second transit time. Some of them were given additional time penalties based on how badly they'd broken the timeline. But certainly race control were right on top of that. So it'll be interesting to see whether we see much of that flash up. Let's hope that the lessons were learned yesterday. We don't see anybody trip over that. It'll be interesting to see, having made the first stop, where the Tony Walls, Jackson Walls objective entry on screen right now ends up. Jackson Walls has been very, very impressive. His father Tony's run a lot of GT machinery over the many years. 6th place finish in the Bathurst 12 Hour a couple of years ago. Jackson Walls has done a little bit open wheeler competition, currently competing in the pro category of Carrera Cup in Australia. A few of these drivers have done mileage in those cars. David Chen now is into pit lane. He's about to hand over to his teammate, Xu Shengwei. This looks like Oscar Lee certainly did come in fairly quickly, so he was not too far behind David Chen on track to hand over to Dan Wells, yesterday's pole sitters. Did very nicely in the opening stanza of the race. Dan Wells looking to try and take advantage of all of that. Now, it's saying the 28 entries, so there's a number of black with red and white trim Lamborghinis in the field, so apologies from me for calling the 28 as the 21. When you see the 21 again on screen, you'll see what I mean. There's not an awful lot to discern the two cars. Certainly a number of these cars have kept their carbon bodywork, their carbon look, as the pole-setting Harmony Racing 16 entry heads out of pit lane. Xu Shengwei now at the wheel. What can he do? Silver-rated driver, as is David Chen. So we'll see what he's capable of. He'll come out immediately in front of Jackson Walls, but of course Jackson's got the tyres up to temperature. No, it's not Jackson Walls, I apologise. That is the 21 entry we're just talking about. Dan Wells has just had the door well and truly closed in his face. Thank you very much, if you don't mind. Just got to be very careful there. Wells is probably a little fired up about that now. Has certainly got around the number 16 entry very, very quickly. Of course, warm tyres is the number 10. Is that still with Cecotto at the field? Yes, that's the race leader. Very wide on turn 3 and a big pack of cars. There is the Jackson Walls entry in pack. So that's the number 10. That is the race leader. So I was picking the other yellow, red and black car at that point. Apologies for that. As we're looking further down the order, that's the number 71 entry. Currently in, sorry, 17 entry. That's Nico Nassi is back behind the wheel. There is your race leader, Jonathan Cecotto. He is just coming through turn 5. And he's probably got another lap after this one to maximise his time behind the wheel. Jackson Walls immediately behind him. And Walls will be trying to do what he can just to eke out a little bit better lap time. We have a lap time at the moment for Jackson Walls, shown in position number 16. Current best lap, no, he's put a lap in the books, of course, 2:08.5, so he'll have improved on his father's time a little bit. Jackson's been doing a lot of racing. A young man, it's a lot to learn, but he's been very impressive in Australia during his GT debuts, so just keep a close eye on the objective entry as they move their way through the field. He's right under the rear wing of Chicotto, so he's showing some very good pace. But so is Chris Vanderdrift in position number 2. He's 6 seconds back from Chicotto, so he certainly got held up just in that last couple of cars into the top 3 as he moved forward. That cost him some time. Now Chicotto, I'd imagine, will carry on through. Walls has gone a little bit wider there. No, they're taking the safe option. So Chicotto and Vanderdrift aren't willing to risk it, and rightly so. There's only just on 2 minutes left on the clock before the compulsory pit stop window closes. And the fastest lap at the moment, you're talking 2:06, so they wouldn't have made it around another time. Mark Darwin also in the number 33 Iron Lynx entry. Top of screen. John Quan's already come in. He's set to complete his lap. So let's see who is next in line, having completed a full lap. Johnson one's on his out lap. He's a little bit further back. Dan Wells, I think, may well be the one they're going to have to consider. He's done the team's fastest first sector. It's not the fastest sector of the race just yet, but the team's fastest first sector. He must be in traffic because he's a little bit off the mark in the second sector. So he's the one we're keeping an eye on. He was back 66 seconds. And remember that these guys, 2 driver entries, are stationary for a minimum of 85 seconds. It's not fair to compare the 66 seconds to 85 because the timing line's a bit further along than where they started to transit the pit lane. So that's not a fair comparison, but we're keeping a close eye on where number 21 entry is at the moment on track. Well, it's going to be tight because he's not far off turning into the final corner. So the number 10 has come out ahead of yesterday's race winner. And just crossing the line now, you'll see him right of screen. There is Dan Wells. So this is going to be well and truly on. And this will be a real baptism of fire for Marco Giltrap, but of course he's going to be cold compared to Dan Wells at a couple of laps behind the wheel. He'll be well and truly fired up. He'll know exactly how much he can get out of that number 21 D1 Racing entry. And he'll be pushing very, very hard. Front of the field, Li Qiang. What can he do? Admittedly a bronze-rated driver, the Chinese driver, has got a couple of fairly fast drivers behind him. One of them being Dan Wells should be a gold-rated driver. Just double-check on that one. 21 entry. No, he's a silver-rated driver. Okay, apologies to Dan. The one gold-rated driver, I think, is Chris Vanderdrift. Not surprisingly. Very, very experienced campaigner. Marco Giltrap is also a silver-rated driver. Of course, he's young enough to be able to do that. Lights being flashed from Dan Wells. That's a big, big, big dive from well back. He set that up absolutely perfectly. And to his credit, Li Qiang just kept out wide and allowed Wells to get through. So what can Marco Giltrap do? Again, this will be a great initiation into this category. He's been finding some great pace. He's learnt an awful lot out of his teammate Chris Vanderdrift. Dan Wells could have his work cut out for him. It'll be interesting to see once the two of them are up to speed. This, of course, is the outlap for Marco Giltrap as to just how much pace difference there is between these two drivers. On the long run, up the back straight, into turn 15. We'll get a good indication of just what the race pace of these two cars is like. Wells is no slouch in one of these cars. A lot of experience in Europe. For Marco Giltrap, yes, he might have a little bit of experience in a GT car, not so much in a Lamborghini Super Trofeo. So he's relying very heavily on his teammate Chris Vanderdrift to learn as much as he can. What you have here is the Pro Class team, effectively. a little bit sideways. He's just got on the power a little bit too quickly, perhaps, Giltrap, in that particular instance. Lap time last time round, of course, out lap for Giltrap. It was a 2:08.1. 2:08.1 for Dan Wells. And it's impressive pace. His best is a 2:08.0. Now he's right under the rear wing of Giltrap. So this is for position. 17.5 minutes to go. This is for the outright lead of the race. Now further back, Lee Chung's dropping back. He's now 4.5 seconds back from the race lead. In position number 4, Prom Sombat's taken over the number 19 entry from his teammate, the Absolute Racing entry. They were very, very good yesterday. First in class at the moment in the AM category. They're in position number 4. Kahing Say still running his single entry for the D1 Racing team. Teammates, of course, to Dan Wells. Back in position number 5 and second in the AM category. So Pro-Am leader is Dan Wells. Outright Pro Class leader is Marco Giltrap. The Lamborghini Cup leader is Kumar back in position number 15. So that just highlights where we're at with the various different categories for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. That follows the international format. As Jackson Walls continues his push forward. Last time round, Jackson Walls did a 2:09.7. The best of a 2:08.5. So he's been over a second and a bit slower than the fastest lap of the race, which held, of course, by Chris Vanderdrift at 2:07.3. Cotto had also turned in a pretty stellar lap at 2:07.7, 2:08 dead for Dan Wells at the moment. The quickest trio on track. Well, he said that. Not so much on track because Vanderdrift is now handed over to Marco Giltrap and Lee Chung has taken over from Jonathan Chicotto. Oh, Bobby Buncheron. They just had to go wide around the outside. 17 entry. Miko Nessie. He's got Jackson Walls right behind him, so Walls has made up some solid time. Currently in position number 10. Looking to perhaps put Nessie on notice. That is for position 3. That's for a position on the podium in Pro-Am. So the 17 and the 10 are going hard at it. Sorry, the 11 in position number 10. I'll get it eventually. Stick with me. Objective Racing team entry. Young Australian. Pushing very hard. Nessie Singapore based. There is Dan Wells. He's taken over the race lead. So whilst I've been rabbiting on about that, Marco Giltrap has lost the position for the lead. I'll look at two different screens at once. Apologies if that's taken place and I've missed it. But Dan Wells, not surprisingly, taken over the race lead. I guess not surprisingly because Marco Giltrap's been turning in some pretty good laps. 2:10.5, his first flying lap. So that's a couple of seconds off the pace of his teammate, but he's just settling in to the car. When you've done a lot of miles like Chris Vanderdrift has, it's pretty easy to just dial yourself in very, very quickly. But when you haven't done a lot of miles in a car like this, and certainly Marco Giltrap hasn't just yet, then it takes a little bit of time to get yourself comfortable in the car. So we're just on 14.5 minutes left in the race. Dan Wells leads Marco Giltrap by just on a second. And further back down the field, that is the number 37 entry. It's Kumar, who is the Lamborghini Cup leader. He's racing against Superchai, the Thai driver in the Siam Gas course entry. There's not much in it. That is for the honours in Lamborghini Cup. And they're also competing against Marchi Min, who is in the Camlung Racing entry in position number 17. He's a little bit further back down the order. And, also Harry O, who unfortunately was the one who saw contact with the barriers down on the exit off turn 3. Beautiful looking livery on the new Evo 2, the aero package on the car and the aesthetics of the front of the car. Very much focused on tying in the relationship with the road car, which we heard from John Flynn, the region's boss of Squadra Corsa, the motorsport arm of Lamborghini, of course. He was giving us the full rundown on the various changes to the car. But certainly from a racer's perspective, the greatest change to the car has been braking. Talking to Andre Couto, the driver coach, yesterday, he said, really, Sean, there's no chance that an amateur driver can really put themselves in a position where they're locking brakes, that they could probably not even find the absolute limit. He said probably a number of pro drivers would struggle to find the absolute limit of the brakes. They're just that good. There is yesterday's second place finisher, just losing position there to Dan Wells. Of course, is the car of John Kwon and Changwei Lee, who's now behind the wheel, the number 63 entry, the blue and purple livery. Korean-based team. Oh, this could be a change for position. Yes, no. There's the two Lamborghini Cup entries going side by side through turn 1 into turn 2. Yes, there is a change for position. What's going to happen in the crossover? Does the 37 get through? Is Kumar going to get it back? We will stay tuned. We'll let you know on that one. I'm not sure he will. I think that has been a good, solid change for position now. And Superchai has moved forward to take the lead in Lamborghini Cup. There's your outright leader. Hong Kong-based Englishman, Dan Wells. Done a lot of competition, whether it's open wheelers, whether it's GT cars, certainly a lot more GT car competition recently, prototypes, LMP2s. Very experienced campaigner, great driver coach, very popular amongst the many AM drivers in Hong Kong. And has been a great asset too to Oscar Lee, who's driven alongside for the last couple of seasons. Been very strong overseas. The difference between Prom Sombat's up to position number 3 now, so Absolute Racing positions 2 and 3. He's 18 seconds further back from Marco Giltrap. The 63 entry, which did so well yesterday in the wet conditions. Smart decision for the SQDA Grit Motorsport team to start on slick tyres. Struggled early, had a spin at the final corner earlier in the race, but ultimately recovered to cross the line third with the disqualification of the number 10 entry. They were moved forward to position number 2, and that's a very impressive debut for the two Korean drivers who had not experienced competition at this level before. Sort of came out of the blue a little bit, surprised all sorts of people, though Andre Couto did say they absorbed absolutely everything that he had to tell them. He's there not only to just help as a coach, but to also establish baseline data from which the AM drivers can compare, so they can see how much further he's braked or what his steering and throttle inputs are like, and just how they can improve themselves doing that. And he said those guys were just absorbing absolutely every single word that I said to them. And he said to see them finish second yesterday and to be so strong, I think second fastest ultimately on track in the end, was an amazing feat. So he said very well done to them, but that's why he's here. That's the whole idea. He said some of the other drivers, they're too busy, going to have a rest, going to have a coffee. Safety car. Okay, so I've been rabbiting on, and something else that I have not seen has appeared. Safety car is going to pick up the field, so somewhere along the line, just check whether we have lost a car on track. See anybody stationary on the tracker. Don't know whether we might have a replay somewhere along the line, but safety car with just under 10 minutes to go. So that absorbs Dan Wells' lead. Marco Giltrap's pace, we'll just take a quick look at that. Best 2077. Okay, we're just talking about just what a brilliant job that they'd done. The very car we were talking about, the number 63 entry, Changwei Lee, Korean driver. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, something has happened, and he is well and truly beached. Just trying to work out where on the circuit he is. Couldn't quite pick the corner up. Frustrating, but that's motor racing. That's the way these things often play out. Have a great day Saturday, not so great day on Sunday. I'm sure the Harmony Racing team will be looking to try and flip their fate from yesterday, where they were forced into retirement early in the piece. Started from pole position. David Chen did a solid run through the opening stanza of this race to hold the early lead before slipping a little bit further back down the order. They're currently set back in position number 8. He made the change to Xu Shangwei, fellow silver-based driver, and they have dropped a little bit further back down the order. So the current positions: Dan Wells, Marco Giltrap, from Sombat, Say, Jiang Li and Miko Nasi are your top 6. Jackson Walls in position number 7. Zhu Zhang Wei, the 16 entry that started on pole position, is in position number 8. Bobby Buncheron in position 9. Benjamin Rouget was quite quick yesterday in the number 7 entry for Vortex Orion Endurance, is in position number 10. So your category leaders, Pro-Am, Dan Wells, they're in a great position. Oscar Lee and Dan Wells to extend their lead in the Pro-Am category, which they are current points leaders, after a solid result yesterday to go P1, stand on the top step of the podium, take pole position points as well, so there's an additional point for that. 15 points for the win, 12 for second, 10 for third. In the AM category, From Sombat and Say are battling over position number 3, so they're position 3 and 4 in the field. The pro category, Marco Giltrap sharing with well, the pro driver in the entry, Chris Vanderdrift, the reigning champion. They're in position number 2. The AM category we're just talking about, Bobby Buncheron, Thai driver, in position number 9 is 3rd. Pro-Am's Dan Wells, Li Chung and Miko Nasi. The AM category is from Sombat, Say and Buncheron. And Lamborghini Cup we saw just prior to the safety car intervention that Superchai had taken over the lead there from Kumar and Marchi Min. So it's unfortunate safety car intervention, and what frustration for the Korean team after such a brilliant job yesterday to work themselves through on slick tyres from towards the rear of field to be ultimately classified second and take top honours in the AM category. Today, not so great a result, unfortunately. That will be a DNF after they are removed from the gravel trap. Still trying to pick up exactly where on the circuit that was. The timing monitor doesn't obviously tell you, but the car tracking screen that I have access to also hasn't really picked them up. Now the Kumar, and if I had a wide shot of the particular spot that he's gone off, I might have been able to pick it, but I can't quite see it at the moment. Beautiful circuit, Sepang International. Great to be back here again. We started here in 2012 with the very first event for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. We've had the world final here. It was 2018, if memory serves correctly. And for this season, we have kicked off our return after a 3-year hiatus to Sepang circuit. Next stop, well, the Ben Motorsport Park in Australia. The very first visit for Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia to Australia on the 9th and 11th of June. Then back to Fuji Speedway in Japan, a circuit that is very, very popular with the teams, 14th to the 16th of July. Then we go back to South Korea, but not Korea International Circuit, where we've competed before, with the recently updated and revised Everland Speedway, not too far from Seoul, on the 18th and the 20th of August. Then back to Shanghai International Circuit in China. That'll be a popular return as we get ready for a restart, not too much longer. We're down at turn 9 at the moment. 8th to the 10th of September for Shanghai, and then of course we finish at the venue of the World Finals. So America, Asia and Europe's finals are all held at Vallelunga in Italy between the 16th and 17th of November, and then on the 18th and the 19th of November is the World Final, and that's where Oscar Lee and Dan Wells performed so solidly 12 months ago during the World Final, and they're performing pretty solidly right now, leading this field with, there's not going to be much time left. The safety car is being called in at the end of this lap. Now depending when they get down and back across the line, where they are on track at the moment, turn 11, they're coming through turn 14, so we'll work that out. Like 14, it certainly is. It's going to be tight. I think they're going to end up with this lap and one more, so there could be 2 more laps left in this race. And it's certainly tight at the front. What can Marco Giltrap do to try and push just a little bit harder and find a way around Dan Wells on sheer outright pace? Probably not enough at the moment. But who is going to be the fly in the ointment? Is there somebody in that front pack that can manage to make something happen? I'm not so sure. Jackson Walls could be one to watch too, back in position number 7 as he fights to try and pick up a position on the podium for Pro-Am. And Dan Wells, not surprisingly, has raced away from Marco Giltrap. You can see middle of screen, that is Jackson Walls just monstering, trying to get through on Nassi immediately in front of him, Lee Chung in front of him. It's on the outside of Nassi. Looks like he's going to get down the inside too, so that's one down. What can he do next? Oh, is he going to get the crossover? Nassi might be able to get him on the run out of the corner because he was a wider entry on that run down to turn 3. Oh, he's lost it. And now there is another move forward from Walls. He's just keeping the door closed. So Lee Chung's dropped back in all of that too. So that could well put Jackson Walls up into position 2 now in Pro-Am to Dan Wells. What a solid result. That's a great run for the young Australian driver. So there is your race leader, Dan Wells. This one looks like it's pretty much set and cut that they are going to take that top points again and extend their advantage in the Pro-Am category. But nothing is ever over until we get to the checkered flag. It's the number 19 that always catches me out. That, of course, is Prom Sombat. Similar-ish livery to the number 10 car, depending on how much vision you have. Certainly not much more for Dan Wells to do than he has already done. He was telling me that this deal with the D1 Racing team came together very, very last minute. In fact, just a week out from the opening round. So he was very happy to make it happen. Oscar Lee really enjoying his time with the Englishman, just gaining as much experience as he can as he looks to become one of the more experienced and competitive drivers in the Asian region. There's a lot more of them these days. Oh, there's a look down the inside. That's very, very tight. That was a brilliant move for Kah Se. He's still right in the mix. That's position number 4. He may have gone up. That's Prom Sombat. He's gone up to position number 3. Yes, he has. What a brilliant drive from the Absolute Racing driver to be right in there. But Kah Se, what a move. That was epic. And Prom Sombat's a bit frustrated. He'd like to get it back. And all the while, Jackson Walls is thinking, thank you very much. If you blokes keep this up, you're going to open the opportunity for me to end up on the outright podium. Bring it on. Let's just keep this running. Marco Giltrap now 2.1 seconds back from race leader Dan Wells. 2:08.5 for Wells on his last flying lap. His battle still for third. He's well and truly on. It's going to be a 4-car fight before too much longer. But Nassi's still in there too. Jackson Walls needs to be a little bit careful. You don't want to get too caught up in any of this. Again, vision in the modern GT cars is very, very difficult. I mean, these sports cars anyway, you sit very low. In a race car, for performance-wise, the driver tends to sit a little bit further back than they would in a road car. And that just makes vision that little bit harder too. So, you can see Prom Sombat's really hard on the throttle in the exit of the corner. Just trying to get as much pace as he could. What can he do to get past Say, take that position back? Walls is going to have a look now up the inside. Going to have to be very, very careful. Yes, he got there just before the tyre driver turned in. Well done from Walls. Now he's going to have a look at Say to see whether or not he can find a position past there. The AM driver, what a brilliant job. I mean, some of these classifications, well, you got to wonder, they really are driving like more seasoned professionals, some of these guys. So full credit to Kah Se. He's doing a great job. It's the D1 Racing team currently holding position number 1 and 3. Leading in both Pro-Am and the AM category. Jackson Walls has got through on Prom Sombat. He's had a spin. He's brought himself unstuck on the exit of turn 14. Just tried to hold his position, get onto the power as quickly as he could. And unfortunately, he has had a spin. Now, that looked like one of the Lamborghini Cup cars, perhaps just pulled to the side of the circuit. What's going on? Oh, a checkered flag, of course. That's what's going on. Clock has ticked down to 0. And Dan Wells, brilliant drive. Marco Giltrap, great job for him too, and right at the end on that last lap, a forceful drive from Jackson Walls to put the objective Lamborghini onto the podium with position number 3. A brilliant drive too for Kahing Say. He did a fantastic job. So did Promsombat too, and disappointing for the Thai driver to have that spin, just trying to protect his position coming out of turn 14. Couldn't quite get on the power. And yes, I did see the Lamborghini Cup entry. So is that Super Chai just struggling to get across the line? Oh, frustrating. Did he keep it off the barriers? Yes, it looks like he did, but unfortunately, loss of position. They've done such a great job all weekend. The two Thai drivers very evenly matched on performance, and great to see them running right towards the front of the field. And yeah, dramas, unfortunately, for Super Chai right at the end in the number 71 Lamborghini. So there you have it. Great drive from Dan Wells. Outright victor today. Pro-Am winner yesterday. They were right in the mix at the front of the field because it was Vanderdrift and Giltrap yesterday. Second for them today. So a good haul of points in the outright championship for the reigning champion, but also for Dan Wells and Oscar Lee. A great outright win. So they take victory in race 2 of 12 this year, and they'll be very happy with that. And for a deal that came together very last minute for the D1 racing operation, a brilliant drive for them to get them through for maximum points today. Third position, a great drive too for Jackson Walls. So Pro-Am, Dan Wells, Jackson Walls and Miko Nasi are your top 3. The pro category, Marco Giltrap and Chris Vanderdrift, of course, will finish in P1. Xu Sheng Wei and David Chen will be in position 2 in the AM category. Well, after that great drive from Kahing Say, he will take victory. And of course, the number 28 entry, he did the whole run on his own, the Hong Kong-based driver. So solid result for him to take top honours in AM category. Second for Bobby Butcheron, will be absolutely overjoyed, the Thai driver. And Johnson Huang for BC Racing, driver from Chinese Taipei, takes position number 3 in the AM category. And Kumar takes the win in Lamborghini Cup. There it is. Number 21 entry of Oscar Lee and Dan Wells take victory from Giltrap and Vanderdrift. Tony Walls and Jackson Walls. Kahing Say, Wei Ling Ni and Miko Nasi in position number 5. Liu Hao Wen, Benjamin Rouget in position 6. Li Chang and Jonathan Chikoto in position number 7. Cyril Buncheron, Bobby Buncheron in position number 8. Johnson Huang and Vincent Tai in position 9. And Annie Watt and Promsombat in position number 10 after that late spin at the end of the race. Great recovery for Henry Kay and Eric Kay, his brother, in the Triple Ace Racing entry after a tough start to the weekend in qualifying. The number 18 entry of Kang and Ray Liu in the TRT Racing entry in position number 12. Kumar in position 13 again. The top points for the Lamborghini Cup. I'm just confirming that. Yes, that is. And beyond that is the Xu Sheng Wei and Harmony Racing pole sitting entry of David Chen back in position 16. There is your race winner. Oscar Lee very happy. So too is Dan Wells, poking holes in the clouds. The number 1, great result for him. And yes, rightly so, Oscar Wells. Shake of the head. How did he do it? Well, he just drove the way he normally does. Good job from the experienced Hong Kong-based Englishman. Yep, very happy with that one. A good solid haul of points and a nice solid lead in the Pro-Am Championship. Of course, results are provisional at this stage until certified and signed off. But shouldn't see any dramas. We didn't see too much trouble either with the compulsory pit stops this time. So again, a bit of a hangover from COVID and being away from racing for so long. Caught a number of teams out during the race yesterday. And that did have a big impact in the end result. Unfortunately, as we saw, the number 10 entry of Li Chiang and Jonathan Chikoto was disqualified after crossing the line second because of their indiscretion. We'll be off to the podium before too much longer. So in Lamborghini Cup, it was Kumar taking the lead in that point score for today from Archie Min and Super Chai, the Thai driver who we saw just struggling to get across the line. But the fact that he was classified, I think, should ensure that he does get those points for a third in Lamborghini Cup. So a good solid opening start to the 2023 season. Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia is well and truly back, and we look forward to a very big year as we go through the program all the way to the World Final at Vallelunga on November from 16 to 19, where we will crown not just the champion for the 2023 Asia Series, but also the World Cup champion for the World Final. There is the number 16 entry, just coming back in down pit lane. Started from pole position after a very frustrating day yesterday. We're running around quite strongly in the tail of the top 10 and had a technical issue which forced them to pull out of the race. They were recovered before the compulsory pit stop started. Started again from pole position, led the early laps of this race, David Chen, and ultimately they had to settle for a position a little bit further back in the field, of course, crossing the line in position number 14. Let's take a look at the start. Very happy for the drivers not to be starting in the rain. It's the first full dry session they'd seen in the last 4 days. And from pole position, left side of screen, David Chen, the Harmony Racing entry we were just talking about. It's Mark Darwin in the orange entry from Iron Links on the left side, just looking to try and make a position forward. He jumped from position 5 through to position number 2. Number 63 entry from Korea was holding a front row start in Kwon, and he actually dropped back through the field. It was some nice close racing up and down the field. That is Tony Walls, the father of Jackson Walls. They will stand on the overall podium after a solid drive through, and then this unfortunate incident for Harry O. Just got the wheels too wide on the exit of turn 3. We're travelling at a pretty fair rate of knots at that point of the circuit. Bobby Buncheron rejoining after the compulsory pit stops. And then things really started to get racy. At that stage, Jonathan Chicotto on the number 10 entry, which had crossed the line second yesterday before a post-race penalty. He was holding the lead up until his compulsory stopped, and ultimately Dan Wells took over the race lead. Jackson Walls was being very racy, making up positions, and Prom Sombat in the number 19 Absolute Racing entry, the tyre driver, just trying to protect positions into the second last corner of the race, just dropped back down the order. He was ultimately classified back in position 10, but was running well and truly inside the top 5. And for Dan Wells and Oscar Lee, a solid result. Very, very happy team, especially after the last couple of weeks where it looked at one stage like they may not be on the grid. The D1 Racing team offered them an opportunity, and they have well and truly paid that back handsomely. So a good result in the end and an extension of their lead in the Pro-Am classification. Good, solid result. We'll be through to the outright championship, the outright race podium before too much longer. We'll step back through the Pro-Am, the Am and the Lamborghini Cup podiums. So stay with us as we highlight all of that. So again, off to the Ben Motorsport Park. It's classified as Adelaide, but it's certainly South Australia. It's an hour to the east of Adelaide on 9th to the 11th, on the 9th to the 11th of June for round number 2. Another 2 50-minute races. Then back to Fuji in Japan in the middle of July, Everland Speedway in South Korea in the 3rd week of August, Shanghai in China for the last race in the Asian region, the 8th to the 10th of September, and then off to Italy for the final round, the 6th round of the 2023 leg of Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia, and ultimately into the world final. Both events happening at Vallelunga. 4-day extravaganza of all things Lamborghini, and that will be great to see. Very, very successful category and a great return to competition. Great to have Giorgio Sana and his team here from Italy in support of the return to competition after a 3-year break, more than 3-year break as it happens. Poor John Flynn had been working very hard and keeping his couch comfortable for all those years, waiting for our return to competition, and managed to put together a fantastic championship. I mean, 20 cars to start the return of Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia was a great way to get the wheels turning again and get everybody excited. And it's great to be back in this part of the world after a long break. Certainly talking to Alex Young, former Formula One driver representing Malaysia, a big part of the reason that Formula One is in fact ever came to this part of Asia. He was talking this morning about just how tired it had been over the last couple of years. There hadn't been an awful lot of racing going on, but now things have well and truly restarted. And to see championships like Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia return to the Asian region and have such a successful return to competition is really been a great boost to the region and has fired a lot of people up to go racing again. And we will see another group of high-level championships come back to Sepang International Circuit during the course of this season. Of course, resurfacing done on parts of the circuit through from turns 5 to about turn 9, set for the return of MotoGP. Unfortunately, we don't have the Formula One Grand Prix in Malaysia anymore, but what a fantastic facility to be able to offer drivers to come and compete. And certainly for something like Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia, it has been a perfect platform for a return to competition at a world-class event. So it is going to be great to carry through this year to some very iconic circuits and to return to some formerly great circuits like Everland, and to make a debut at the Ben Motorsport Park, certainly in Australia, is a purpose-built facility that certainly too is world-class. So the drivers are going to get a lot of great experience on a lot of fantastic circuits during the course of this season, and they are going to really enjoy this championship. We'll see a few drivers come and go across the course of the year, but certainly the core leaders of the various championships are looking forward to a very strong year. So we can't wait to see the way this one unfolds. We should very shortly be going to the podium, so stay with us. We'll see the celebrations of the winners from the second race of the season. A very different race to yesterday. For those of you who weren't able to join us, we sat on the grid in sprinkling rain, waiting for it to blow over, and then the heavens opened, and it was torrential for a good half an hour. Absolutely flooded the circuit, drained fairly quickly. They left the cars on the grid. Drivers, in many cases, sat in the cars, and ultimately we had a restart. We lost only 3 or 4 minutes in the end, despite the fact we were delayed by about 45 minutes, and a number of the more experienced drivers opted for slick tyres on a wet circuit, and that certainly played dividends as over the course of the race the track started to dry, and they were able to maintain position. It sounds like we're getting ready for presentations, so stick with us. We should be up for the outright podium. And there we are, Tony Walls and Jackson Walls, the father and son team. What a great way to go racing, to bring your son through and enjoy one-make competition, as we have here in equal equipment. It's yesterday's winners, Marco Giltrap and Chris Vanderdrift. It's Australians and New Zealanders. Australians and New Zealanders, and the winners, well, Oscar Lee and Dan Wells. Fantastic result for them. And that's a team with an awful lot of experience in these cars, so a great result to see them stand on the top step of the podium. Likewise, Chris Vanderdrift, an awful lot of experience. What was that fantastic one-liner? He's opened more bottles of champagne than most waiters. Well, absolutely, as Chris Vanderdrift. Solid result. Another trophy to the cabinet, but most importantly, another strong haul of points. So a victory yesterday, second place today, and there you have the outright podium. Oscar Lee and Dan Wells, Marco Giltrap, Chris Vanderdrift, Tony Walls and Jackson Walls. And they did a great job. Tony had a good opening stint, but his pace certainly isn't there. He's no spring chicken anymore. But young Jackson really held up his end of the deal and ultimately managed to drag the team through. Very aggressive as he came back through the field, but also very calculating. He only put his nose down the inside when he needed to, and that's one of the big risks. It's just not to get too carried away. You can be aggressive all you like, but if that means you're banging corners and creating issues, then you've got a problem. But ultimately, he got his pace down to a 2:08.5, and you compare that to Dan Wells at a 2:08.0 and to Chris Vanderdrift with a 2:07.3. It's a pretty stellar effort from Jackson Walls, so full credit to them. Nice job to Dan Wells and Oscar Lee. Oscar's just drowning his teammate in champagne. Bit of a height advantage for Dan Wells, so you can have a shower from the Englishman, of course based in Hong Kong. And we reset now for what I'd expect to be the Pro-Am Championship. So overall, you're talking outright, and having taken victory in Pro-Am, Oscar Lee and Dan Wells will extend their championship points lead by 3 points over Tony Walls and Jackson Walls, so the same 1-2 finish. And if I look down to third in Pro-Am, it was it was the same 1-2-3 as the opening race, so they finished 1-2-3 again. So the extension of points, so the Yes, okay, so that's Wellington and Miko Nassi in position number 3. So they will extend, well, they'll double their points to 20. Walls and Jackson, who finished second, just appeared on the podium, will double their points to 22, and 24. And Oscar Lee and Dan Wells, by adding another 15 points, will extend their advantage out to 31 points. So that is a nice solid 7-point advantage as we head to Australia for the second round of the season. 2 50-minute races at each round. So for Dan Wells and Oscar Lee, we're going to get a second champagne shower. We'll be hoping for a little bit of rain. It starts to get a bit hot and sticky in this part of the world when you're drowning yourself in bubbly champagne. And there you have it. Oscar Lee and Dan Wells for D1 Racing Team, Tony Walls and Jackson Walls for the Objective Racing Team, and Wei Liang Ni and Miko Nassi for Racecraft in position number 3. It's one very loud pair of pants. So congratulations to the Pro-Am class podium finishers. A great result, and yes, the traditional champagne. Stand back. Tony and Jackson Walls had had enough. They've exited stage left, or right in that case. Dan Wells and Oscar Lee have just figured, well, we've got drowned in it after the first race, we might as well have another go. So then we're off to the AM class finish, and Kah Hing Se for D1 Racing Team, who'll be celebrating both victory in Pro-Am and the AM category. He takes the win after a solid close to that race. He really was very impressive, and I have to say a number of these amateur drivers really did turn in a fantastic result. Again, I keep highlighting talking to driver coach Andre Couto, and he said these cars are just so forgiving and so easy to drive, comfortable to drive at speed, and it really does give a gentleman driver, an AM class driver, these people who don't do this for a profession, compared to the likes of Dan Wells and Chris Vanderdrift and Andre Couto, it gives them the full racing experience without having to drive the car on the edge. He said some of the one-make categories, they really do require you to have some level of ability to be able to push the car to its absolute limit. He said these cars, you don't have to do that, and you really get the experience and the pace, and more importantly, they're very comfortable to drive. So he couldn't rave enough about the Super Trofeo Huracan, the Evo 2. So he really felt it was good. That's Bobby Buncheron, who finished in position 2. He'd be very happy with that. Loves his motorsport, the Thai driver. Really enjoyed it. Kah Hing Se can celebrate too with the chrome shades, having taken victory, and that was a very impressive drive. And in third position, of course, for the BC Racing entry, Johnson Huang and Vincent Tai, 2 drivers from Chinese Taipei. A great result for them, and yeah, you can see, I was just saying, Bobby's very impressed. He's done this a long time. He's been involved in a number of one-make categories in this part of the world for a very, very long time. He's no spring chicken either, but loves his motorsport. You can see just how passionate he was to end up in position number 2 on the podium. Position 8 outright after having qualified, I think, 10th and 11th for the 2 sessions. In fact, I don't have to think anything if I just check out where he is on my cheat sheet. Yeah, we qualified 10th in both sessions, so that is a great result for him, and to be second in AM category really is a nice result. So he'll be well and truly celebrating. The Thai driver for True Visions Motorsport, very happy. Johnson Huang, he's raced against him a few times in the past, and I have to say I'm very impressed with Kah Hing Se. He really drove very, very well. A Hong Kong-based driver. Yep, well and truly deserves the accolade. Soak it up for as long as you can. That's going on the lounge room wall, that one. Top step of the podium during the opening round of the return of Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia. We go into the Lamborghini Cup podium. And I would expect Super Chai for Siam Gas course who crawled across the line, but certainly did a great job during the opening race. He took the victory yesterday. Will be classified in position number 3. Be frustrated not to have added to his tally yesterday, which was the full haul of points. He got pole and he took the win. 16 points. Looks like Keith Vong. And Marchi Min in position number 2 and the winner. And very happy to be there. Kumar did a great job, the local driver, Prabhakaran, to take the victory. And there it is, Kumar Prabhakaran for Iron Links, the number 37 entry, takes the win from Marchi Min and Keith Vong for Kamlung Racing. Keith Vong going to what's his new home circuit of the Ben Motorsport Park for the next round of the championship, and Super Chai for Siam Gas Course in position number 3. So that rounds out race 2 of round 1 of Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asia for the 2023 season. We will see you again at the Ben Motorsport Park in Australia. Please join us 9th to 11th of June for round 2 of the 2023 season.